Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Thrust and Thunder. Just a quick recap of what we did in the last episode. We disassembled the driver's side of the Grand Design Solitude 8K axles, removed the hubs, cleaned them out, removed the leaf springs, all the parts, all the hardware, and now it's time to remove this rust and turn it into an actual coating that we can paint over top of, which is going to be one of the products that we're going to use in order to do this. It's called Eastwood's Rust Converter. It's a really great product. It essentially takes the rust on a chemical level and turns it into a primer, which we will use to place the rust encapsulator over top of. This will prevent any further corrosion on the parts as the rig is used on the highway, especially during rain and wet highway conditions. I never really take the camper out during the wintertime where the roads may or may not be salty. At any rate, let's go ahead and get started with episode 2 of Thrust and Thunder. Now we'll go ahead and start cleaning the parts with a simple bench grinder using the wire brush side of the grinder. You're not going to get all the rust off this method. From here, I will use a drill with a wire brush on it to get into the cracks and crevices. This is specifically the hardware that came off of the brake assemblies on the backing plate. You can see just how much corrosion has developed once again in just a year's time on the nuts and the bolts. We're going to take the bench grinder once again and remove that surface rust just enough so that we can get the encapsulator adhered directly to the metal. I strongly recommend using a vice grip like I've got here. You do not want to handle such a small piece in your hands when using the bench grinder because you could lose your grip on the hardware and it may go flying in any direction to include hitting you. Now there's several different ways to apply this Eastwood Platinum coating to your hardware. I highly suggest dipping it and then brushing it off with a sponge brush to remove the excess. You don't want the encapsulator to get stuck in the threads. It makes your hardware a lot more difficult to reapply. Here we're placing the chassis saver paint onto the leaf spring. You got to make sure you get all the way into the deep crevices. Now on the other leaf springs, I use the rust converter from Eastwood before applying the first coat of chassis saver. On this first one, I just put the chassis saver, but I spent a lot more time taking the surface rust off using the drill and the wire brush than if I just would have used the rust converter. Now it does take 2 separate coats and it's about 4 hours to dry in between, so it does take a little bit of extra time using the drill, but it's not as much manual labor getting in the cracks and crevices with that rust converter. Here we have all the hardware after applying the coatings, both the Platinum Rust Encapsulator from Eastwood and the chassis saver. Now all of this is really high quality stuff, but it does take about 3 to 4 hours to dry. You do not want to touch it and have it tacky whatsoever and handle it. You want it to dry completely. I will provide some links in the description for both the Rust Encapsulator from Eastwood and chassis saver. All right, here's some of that rust converter. So it's actually taking the rust and chemically converting it to a primer that we can paint on top of with the rust encapsulator. This is the first time I'd ever seen this product. I'm telling you, it went miles above and beyond what I thought it was going to be capable of. I will absolutely be buying more of this and using it on other projects around my garage and the house. This is what the axle looked like after I just applied the rust converter, before I even put on this chassis saver right here. Just fantastic product. I couldn't recommend it enough. It just takes about 3 to 4 hours to dry, just like this chassis saver paint. Now here's something I haven't spoken about a lot just yet. The frame has also got rust on it because obviously the spray coming off the wheels on that drive on salty roads got on the frame as well, and it also is starting to corrode. So we are also going to be applying the same chassis saver product to the frame as we go along. Some of that may not be included in this video, but certainly I'm going to show it here around the wheel wells. Now we're back to the brake backing plate hardware that we cleaned off with the bench grinder a while ago. As you can see, I'm dipping the hardware in and then taking the brush in order to get the encapsulator out of the threads so that it's not too much encapsulator there to prevent the hardware from reattaching with a whole lot of effort. So brushing it off, getting the excess out, very important. This is the wire brush attachment that I spoke about earlier that's attached to the drill. Just placing that in the cracks and crevices gets out some of the excess rust pretty easily. We're back to using the rust converter on the wheel hubs here. Obviously the best product to use. You just want to use the wire brush attached to the drill to get off the surface rust, most of it, and then the stuff that's left behind can be removed by the rust converter. And you'll see in just a moment, it leaves behind just a beautiful primer coat which can be painted on top of. As you can see, it takes some effort to get down in these little cracks and crevices, but the end result is a lot easier when you get to the encapsulator phase. Here we have a wheel hub which hasn't been touched at all with the wire brush or the rust converter. And then over here, of course, the wheel hub which has just the rust converter applied and it has dried. You can see some residue has gotten inside the wheel hub. That's not a big deal. As soon as the brakes are applied on the camper, the residue will burn off. Here you have the brake assemblies after rust converter's been applied to them. We'll put on a coating of chassis saver paint as well. Once again, for a moment, just going back to just how much corrosion is on these brake assemblies. It's quite amazing. 1 year of use, this much corrosion, probably on just a few miles worth of salty roads. Tried a couple different brush types. The sponge brush is absolutely the best one to use in my opinion. It seems to apply it evenly. You don't get the drips, so I recommend the sponge brush for sure. So that's going to do it for this episode of Thrust and Thunder, where we have covered the derusting and restoration of all the parts and hardware. Next episode, we're going to go into reinstallation and test drive, talk about a couple other things after the test drive. If you like the content that you're seeing, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. For now, we'll see you on the next one.